Commander Li Huan stood in the observation deck of the space station above Earth, watching the morning sun rise over the blue planet below. His dark eyes reflected the light as he sipped his tea, a habit he had kept for all his 60 years of life. Today felt different, though. Today something was about to change forever. "Sir, we have an incoming transmission from the Kareth fleet," said his assistant, a young woman named Officer Song Hana. Her voice was steady, but Li Huan could hear the worry hidden beneath her calm words. "Put it through to the main screen," Li Huan replied, setting down his teacup with careful precision. He had been expecting this call for months now. The screen flickered to life, showing the massive form of Supreme War Leader Vorthak. The alien creature stood nearly 3 meters tall with thick armor-like skin and 6 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Behind him, Li Huan could see the bridge of a Kareth warship, filled with other aliens checking weapons and battle systems. "Human." Vorthak's voice rumbled through the speakers like distant thunder. "I speak for the hegemony of Kareth, the Zeth Corporate Syndicate, and the Void-Touched Alliance. We have watched your species spread across 847 worlds like a disease. Your weakness disgusts us." Li Huan nodded politely, his hands folded behind his back. "Good morning, War Leader Vorthak. How may we help you today?" The alien's 6 eyes narrowed with rage. "Help? You pathetic creatures understand nothing. For 3,000 years you have pretended to be peaceful. You grow food and write poetry while real warriors conquer the stars. No more." Around the bridge, other human officers watched in silence. Dr. Park Yuna, the head of their research division, stood near the back of the room. She was a small woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to notice everything. Next to her was Admiral Kim Do-hyun, a tall man with gray hair who commanded their merchant fleet. His face showed no emotion as he listened to the aliens' threats. "You have 72 hours. Vorthak continued, his voice growing louder. "Withdraw from all worlds except your home planet. Give up your colonies, your trade routes, your pathetic little farms. Submit to the hegemony's rule, or we will destroy every human in the galaxy." Li Huan smiled gently, the same smile he had used in peace talks for the past 20 years. "We appreciate your offer, War Leader Vorthak, but we must respectfully decline. Perhaps you should reconsider this course of action." The alien roared with laughter, a sound like grinding metal. "Reconsider? You have no weapons, no armies. Your ships carry grain and medicine, not guns. We have seen your pathetic defenses. A single Kareth destroyer could flatten your strongest colony." "I understand your confidence," Li Huan replied calmly. "But we really do suggest you think about this more carefully." "Think?" Vorthak's claws scraped against his command console. "The time for thinking is over. In 72 hours we begin the harvest. The galaxy will finally be free of human weakness." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in silence. Officer Song Hana looked around nervously. "Sir, should we evacuate the outer colonies? The Kareth fleet has over 10,000 ships. Our merchant vessels can't fight them." Li Huan turned away from the dark screen and picked up his tea again. "Send a message to all human worlds," he said quietly. "Tell them to prepare for visitors." "What kind of preparations, sir?" Song Hana asked. Dr. Park Yuna spoke for the first time, her voice soft but clear. "The usual kind," she said. "Haven't you read the old protocols?" "Protocols?" Song Hana looked confused. "What protocols?" Admiral Kim Do-hyun stepped forward, his boots clicking on the metal floor. "The ones we hoped we would never need again," he said. "Contact Engineer Cho Minji on Luna Base. Tell her it's time to open the vault." Across the galaxy, other species watched the broadcast with a mixture of pity and fear. The Narathi Trade Collective, humanity's closest allies, immediately began moving their ships away from human space. They had seen what happened when the Kareth decided to destroy a species. It was never pretty. On the Narathi homeworld, Council Speaker Ithara shook her 4-armed body sadly. "Poor humans," she said to her advisors. "They never learned to be strong. Now they will pay the price for their weakness." But on a moon orbiting Jupiter, Engineer Cho Minji received Admiral Kim's message and smiled for the first time in years. She was a young woman, barely 30, with oil-stained hands and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She walked through the corridors of what everyone believed was an agricultural research station, past rooms full of workers who were definitely not studying plants. "Attention all sections," she announced over the station's communication system. "Project Garden is now active. Repeat, Project Garden is active. All staff to positions." The workers stopped what they were doing and looked at each other with expressions of relief and excitement. They had been waiting for this day for their entire lives. Some of them were the children and grandchildren of people who had been waiting much longer. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, massive doors that had been sealed for 3,000 years began to open. Ancient machines hummed to life, their systems checking and rechecking themselves after centuries of sleep. Warning lights flashed in empty corridors as automated systems began their startup sequences. Captain Ryu Jinwoo sat in the command chair of the HSS Harmony, a ship that most of the galaxy knew as a peaceful research vessel. He was young for a captain, only 28, with the kind of bright eyes that suggested he still believed the universe was full of wonderful discoveries. Right now, those eyes were focused on the readings from his ship's computers. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving activation codes from Luna Base." "Confirmed," Ryu Jinwoo replied. "Begin transformation sequence." Around the Harmony, space itself seemed to ripple and bend. The ship's outer hull shifted and expanded, revealing weapons ports that had been hidden for decades. Gun turrets emerged from what had looked like cargo bays. The ship's length doubled, then tripled, as sections that had been folded into impossible spaces unfolded into their true configurations. All across human space, the same thing was happening. Ships that had carried grain between the stars revealed themselves as destroyers. Space stations that had grown food for alien visitors transformed into fortress platforms. Research bases on asteroids unveiled massive gun batteries that had been disguised as mining equipment. On Earth, Li Huan finished his tea and set the cup down on a small table. He looked out at the planet below, where billions of humans went about their daily lives, most of them not knowing that everything was about to change. "Sir," Officer Song Hana said, still looking confused and frightened. "What's happening? What are these protocols everyone keeps talking about?" Dr. Park Yuna joined Li Huan at the observation window. "Tell her," she said gently. "She has a right to know." Li Huan sighed and turned to face the young officer. 3,000 years ago, humanity made a choice, he began. We had become very good at war, too good. We could destroy entire star systems with weapons that most species still can't imagine. We were on the path to wiping out all other intelligent life in the galaxy. Song Hana's eyes widened. But the history books say we evolved beyond war. They say we chose peace because we learned wisdom. We did choose peace, Li Huan agreed, but not because we couldn't fight anymore. We chose peace because we were too good at fighting. We realized that if we continued on that path, we would be alone in the universe. So we made a deal with ourselves. What kind of deal? Dr. Park Yuna answered. We would hide our weapons. We would pretend to be weak. We would let other species think they were stronger than us. And in return, we would have a galaxy full of friends instead of a galaxy full of graves. Song Hana looked back and forth between them. But the Kareth don't want to be friends. No, Li Huan said sadly. They don't. And that means our 3,000 years of peaceful pretending is about to come to an end. Far away, in the Kareth fleet, Supreme War Leader Vorthak was already making plans for victory. His ships would arrive at the first human colony in 60 hours. By this time tomorrow, the galaxy would see what happened to species that chose weakness over strength. He had no idea that humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to choose when to be weak and when to be something else entirely. Captain Ryu Jinwoo watched the enemy fleet approach on his main screen. 47 Kareth warships moved through space like hungry sharks, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed to crack planets in half. They were heading for New Busan, a human colony that the aliens believed was nothing more than farms and research labs. "Sir, they'll be in firing range in 20 minutes, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Suho. The young man's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he worked at his controls. "Understood," Ryu Jinwoo replied calmly. Around him, the bridge of the HSS Harmony hummed with quiet activity. His crew had trained for this moment their entire lives, but none of them had ever expected it to actually happen. The Harmony hung in space near New Busan, looking like exactly what the galaxy believed it to be, a peaceful research vessel studying asteroid compositions. Its hull gleamed white and silver, decorated with the symbols of the human scientific collective. To the approaching Kareth fleet, it probably looked like a harmless butterfly floating near a flower. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Kareth flagship." "Put it through," Ryu Jinwoo said. settling back in his command chair. The screen flickered, showing the scarred face of a Kareth battle commander. The alien's 6 eyes glowed red with anticipation. Human vessel, you have 10 minutes to evacuate the area. We are here to claim this world for the hegemony. Your pathetic ship cannot stop us. Ryu Jinwoo smiled the same gentle smile that Li Huan had used during the ultimatum. Good afternoon, Commander. I'm afraid we can't leave just yet. We have some important research to finish. The Kareth commander's claws scraped against his armrest. Research? You study rocks while we prepare for war? Your stupidity will be remembered as the reason your species died. Perhaps, Ryu Jinwoo agreed pleasantly. But before you begin shooting, I should warn you about something. Warn us? The alien laughed, a sound like breaking glass. What could you possibly warn us about? Well, Ryu Jinwoo said, still smiling, you should know that the Harmony isn't actually a research ship. The alien commander's laughter stopped abruptly. What did you say? Instead of answering with words, Ryu Jinwoo turned to his crew. All stations, drop the disguise. Let them see what we really are. Lieutenant Park Suho's fingers flew over his controls. Stealth fields deactivating. True configuration emerging. Weapon systems online. The space around the Harmony began to shimmer and twist. The small research vessel seemed to unfold like an origami flower, revealing its true size and shape. Within seconds, what had appeared to be a 200-meter science ship transformed into a 12-kilometer battleship that dwarfed everything in the Kareth fleet. The ship's white hull shifted to reveal armor plating that seemed to absorb light itself. Weapon ports opened along its length like the eyes of some ancient god. Energy fields crackled between massive gun turrets that could have served as space stations by themselves. On the Kareth flagship, alarms began screaming. Sir, one of the alien officers shouted, our sensors are reading power levels that shouldn't be possible. That ship is generating more energy than our entire fleet combined. The Kareth commander stared at the screen in disbelief. Impossible. Humans don't have technology like this. They're farmers and poets. Ryu Jinwoo's voice came through their communication system, still calm and polite. Actually, Commander, we're much better at poetry than farming. But we're quite good at other things, too. Before the aliens could respond, more ships began appearing around New Busan. They materialized out of empty space as their stealth system shut down, revealing a fleet that had been hiding in plain sight for months. What the Kareth had thought was empty space was actually filled with human warships that made their own vessels look like toys. On the surface of New Busan, engineer Cho Minji stood in what the galaxy believed was an agricultural research center. Around her, workers moved quickly between control panels that had nothing to do with growing crops. She watched the space battle beginning overhead through a massive transparent dome that most aliens thought was a greenhouse. Planetary defense grid is online, reported one of her technicians, a middle-aged man named Dr. Yoon Ho-jin. All surface batteries are charged and ready. Excellent, Cho Minji replied, her fingers dancing over a control panel that looked like something from a starship rather than a farm. Begin phase 2 of the demonstration. Above them, the Kareth fleet was trying to retreat, but they quickly discovered that human ships were much faster than anyone had believed possible. The aliens found themselves surrounded by vessels that moved through space as if the normal laws of physics were merely suggestions. Sir, Lieutenant Park Suho reported to Captain Ryu Jinwoo, the enemy is attempting to flee. Should we pursue? No need, Ryu Jinwoo replied. This is a demonstration, not a battle. We want them to survive so they can tell others what they've seen. He opened a communication channel to the Kareth flagship. Commander, you seem to be having trouble with your navigation. Would you like some assistance? The alien commander's voice came through, filled with rage and fear. What are you? Humans don't have weapons like this. Your ships were supposed to carry grain and medicine. They do carry grain and medicine, Ryu Jinwoo answered honestly. We have the largest medical supply network in the galaxy, and we feed dozens of species that can't grow enough food on their own worlds. But we also carry other things. One of the human ships demonstrated this by firing a warning shot past the Kareth flagship. The weapon didn't explode or create any visible beam. Instead, space itself seemed to tear open for a moment, revealing something that hurt to look at directly. When the tear closed, the asteroid it had passed through was simply gone, as if it had never existed. Back on Earth, Dr. Park Yuna stood in her laboratory, watching data streams from across human space. For 3,000 years, She and her predecessors had been studying every alien species in the galaxy. They knew how each race thought, what they feared, how they fought, and most importantly, how to defeat them without causing unnecessary death. "Ma'am," her assistant, Dr. Kim Ji-won, said quietly, "the Kareth fleet is requesting emergency evacuation. They're claiming their ships are malfunctioning." Dr. Park Yuna smiled. "They're not malfunctioning. We're simply showing them how their weapons work when we want them to. Send medical aid if they need it, but keep our ships in position. This lesson isn't over yet." The truth was that every piece of alien technology in the galaxy had been quietly modified over the past 3 millennia. Human trade ships had visited every major species, offering to help upgrade their computers, improve their engines, and enhance their weapons. What the aliens didn't know was that every upgrade included hidden programs that would activate when humanity chose to use them. The Kareth discovered this when their own weapons began refusing to fire at human targets. Their engines started limiting their maximum speed. Their life support systems began playing peaceful music instead of battle hymns. Supreme War Leader Vortak, watching from his command ship far behind the main fleet, felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. "How?" he whispered to his advisors. "How did they hide ships that large? How do they have weapons that can unmake matter itself?" His science officer, a nervous creature named Sub-Commander Krex, was studying the sensor readings with shaking claws. "Sir, according to our instruments, those human ships are using technology that violates at least 6 fundamental laws of physics. They're manipulating gravity, space, and time itself. That's impossible." "Yes, sir, it should be impossible." "But they're doing it anyway." Meanwhile, Admiral Kim Do-hyun sat in his command center on Mars, coordinating the response across all of human space. His merchant fleet was revealing itself system by system, showing the galaxy that humanity had been building and hiding a military force beyond anyone's imagination. "Sir," his aide, Commander Lee Nara, reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different Kareth battle groups. They're asking for safe passage back to their home systems." "Granted," Admiral Kim replied, "but escort them personally. I want every alien in the galaxy to see our ships and know that we could have destroyed them all at any time over the past 3,000 years. The escorts were ships that had pretended to be cargo haulers and passenger liners. As they formed up around the retreating Kareth vessels, their true nature became clear. Each merchant ship was actually a carrier launching fighters that moved like living light through space. Their cargo containers opened to reveal weapons that seemed to bend reality around them. Captain Ryu Jinwoo remained on station near New Busan, his massive ship now fully revealed in all its terrifying beauty. The Harmony was more than a warship. It was a work of art designed by people who understood that sometimes the most important battles were won before the first shot was fired. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Suho said, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth. Commander Li Huan wants to speak with the entire galaxy." "Put it through on all frequencies," Ryu Jinwoo ordered. "Let everyone hear this." Li Huan's voice reached every ship, every space station, and every inhabited world in the galaxy. His tone was still gentle, still polite, but now there was something else underneath it that made veteran warriors pay attention. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began. "Humanity regrets that Dr. Park Yuna walked through the corridors of the research archive beneath Geneva, her footsteps echoing in halls that most humans didn't even know existed. The walls were lined with data storage units containing 3,000 years of carefully gathered intelligence on every species in the galaxy. Today, for the first time since the Great Treaty was signed, someone was going to access the files marked "in case of war." "Ma'am," her assistant Dr. Kim Ji-won called out, slightly out of breath from trying to keep up with her quick pace. "The Kareth have sent another surrender request. This time it's from their Supreme Council, not just their military." Dr. Park Yuna stopped at a massive vault door that required both her handprint and retinal scan to open. "Tell them we're not interested in their surrender yet," she said calmly. "We have more things to show them first." The vault opened with a soft hiss, revealing rows upon rows of files that contained secrets the galaxy wasn't ready to learn. Dr. Park Yuna pulled out a thick folder labeled "Project Understanding, Complete Psychological Profiles of Hostile Species." "Ji-won," she said, handing the folder to her assistant, "send this information to all human commanders. It's time they learned exactly how to defeat the Kareth without firing another shot." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the HSS Harmony, Captain Ryu Jinwoo was receiving updates from across human space. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had shocked the galaxy, but the Kareth leadership was proving more stubborn than expected. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Suho reported, "we're detecting massive fleet movements in Kareth space. It looks like they're calling in their allies. We're tracking ships from the Zeth Corporate Syndicate and the Void-Touched Alliance." Ryu Jinwoo nodded thoughtfully. "How many ships total?" "Conservative estimate? 50,000 warships, sir. They're massing at the edge of human space. It looks like they plan to overwhelm us with numbers." "I see," Ryu Jinwoo said, his voice betraying no concern whatsoever. "Send a message to Admiral Kim. Tell him it's time for the full revelation protocol." Across the galaxy, humanity began showing just how thoroughly they had been preparing for this day. On a moon orbiting Saturn, Engineer Cho Minji activated systems that had been sleeping for 3 millennia. Massive construction bays that had been disguised as mining operations opened their doors, revealing ships that dwarfed even the mighty Harmony. "Project Gardner is now active," she announced to her team. "Begin launching the Deep Defense Fleet." The ships that emerged were so large they had their own artificial gravity and weather systems. Each one was essentially a mobile city, equipped with weapons that could reshape solar systems. They had been built slowly, quietly, one piece at a time, by workers who thought they were constructing orbital habitats for human colonists. Admiral Kim Do-hyun stood on the command deck of his flagship, the HSS Peaceful Resolution, watching as humanity's true fleet assembled. The ship was 15 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack moons. But it still looked like a passenger liner to anyone who didn't know what to look for. "Sir?" His aide, Commander Lee Nara, said, final count is coming in. We have just over 2 million active vessels with another 5 million in reserve status." "Excellent," Admiral Kim replied. "And our manufacturing capability? Every human world has at least one hidden shipyard, sir. If this conflict continues, we can build new ships faster than the enemy can count them." The truth was starting to become clear to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity's 847 known worlds were just the tip of an iceberg that went deeper than anyone had imagined. Hidden in asteroid fields, disguised as research stations, and scattered throughout empty space were thousands of secret colonies and military bases. On the Kareth homeworld, Supreme War Leader Vorthak was receiving reports that made less sense with each passing hour. His intelligence officers were telling him that human ships were appearing in places where sensors said there was nothing but empty space. Their weapons were ignoring known physics. Their numbers kept growing no matter how many his scouts managed to count. "How many humans are there?" he demanded of his chief intelligence officer. The nervous alien consulted his datapad with shaking claws. "Sir, our best estimates put their population at approximately 50 billion across their known colonies." "And how many ships are we detecting?" "Currently tracking 2.3 million active warships, sir, with more appearing every hour." Vorthak's 6 eyes narrowed as he did the mathematics. "That would mean every 20 humans has their own warship. That's impossible." What he didn't know was that the real human population wasn't 50 billion. It was closer to 2 trillion souls spread across hidden colonies, generation ships, and space habitats that had been carefully concealed for 3,000 years. Every agricultural world was actually a fortress. Every research station was a military base. Every merchant ship was a disguised warship. Dr. Park Yuna was now in her element, analyzing the psychological profiles of the enemy commanders. She had studied Kareth behavior patterns for decades. Just as her predecessors had studied every other species in the galaxy, she knew exactly which buttons to push to make them make mistakes. The Kareth respect only strength, she explained to a meeting of human commanders via secure communication. But they define strength very narrowly. They think big guns and thick armor are the only things that matter. They can't understand technology that works in ways they don't recognize. Commander Li Huan's image appeared on the screen from Earth. "What do you recommend, Doctor?" "We show them something that their minds simply cannot process." Dr. Park Yuna replied with a smile that was both gentle and terrifying. "We demonstrate the impossibility weapons. The impossibility weapons were humanity's greatest secret, devices that worked by convincing reality to behave differently than it normally did. They had been theoretical when the Great Treaty was signed, but 3,000 years of research by the galaxy's most brilliant minds had made them real." Engineer Cho Minji received the authorization codes and began activating systems that had never been tested in actual combat. deep space installations that looked like asteroid. Mining operations revealed themselves as weapons platforms that could reach across interstellar distances to touch their targets. The first demonstration came when the massed Kareth fleet tried to enter human space. 50,000 ships approached the border between human and neutral territory, expecting to face whatever defenses humanity could muster. Instead, they found themselves facing something impossible. Space itself seemed to reach out and gently push their ships backward, no matter how much power they applied to their engines. Their weapons fired, but the energy beams curved away from human ships as if the laws of physics had decided to take humanity's side. Captain Ryu Jinwoo watched the alien fleet struggle against forces they couldn't understand. "Tactical," he said calmly. "Begin the discouragement protocol." "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Park Suho replied, his fingers moving over controls that activated weapons systems scattered across a dozen star systems. Initiating selective reality modification. The Kareth discovered that their ship's computers had developed sudden opinions about warfare. Navigation systems began steering them away from human targets. Weapons computers started asking philosophical questions about the morality of violence. Their own artificial intelligence systems had apparently become pacifists overnight. What they didn't know was that every piece of alien technology in the galaxy contained hidden subroutines that humans had installed over the past 3 millennia. Every computer chip, every software upgrade, every helpful modification that human traders had offered to alien species contained backdoors that were now finally being activated. Supreme War Leader. Vorthak watched in growing horror as his fleet began to fall apart without taking any apparent damage. Ships reported that their weapons were malfunctioning, their engines were operating at reduced power, and their computers were displaying poetry instead of tactical information. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They want to talk." The screen flickered to show Dr. Park Yuna sitting in what looked like a peaceful laboratory. Behind her, charts and diagrams covered the walls showing complex equations that seemed to hurt the eyes to look at directly. "Good afternoon, War Leader Vorthak," she said politely. "I am Dr. Park Yuna, Chief Researcher for the Human Cultural Exchange Program. I've been studying your species for 37 years. Studying us?" Vorthak snarled. "For what purpose?" "To understand you," Dr. Park Yuna replied simply. "You see, we learned long ago that the best way to defeat an enemy is to understand them so completely that you know how to help them defeat themselves." She gestured to the charts behind her. "These equations describe Kareth psychological responses to different types of stress. This diagram shows your species' decision-making patterns under pressure, and this file contains a complete analysis of your personal command style, based on observation of your behavior over the past 15 years. Vorthak's claws clenched involuntarily. "You've been watching me for 15 years? "Oh yes," Dr. Park Yuna said with the same gentle smile that all humans seem to share. "We've been watching everyone. Every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange was also an intel at this." Supreme War Leader Vorthak made the worst decision of his very long life. Instead of accepting Dr. Park Yuna's gentle warning, he chose to interpret humanity's restraint as weakness. Within hours of their conversation, he sent word across the galaxy to every species that had ever harbored resentment against human success. "The humans are bluffing," his message declared. "Their tricks with our computers proved nothing. Numbers will defeat their illusions, join the hegemony and share in the spoils when we divide their worlds among us." The response was swift and massive. The Zeth corporate syndicate contributed their entire merchant fleet, over 100,000 ships converted for war. The Void-touched alliance emerged from the dark spaces between stars with vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. Even smaller species that had never shown military interest before suddenly produced fleets that nobody knew they possessed. Within a week, nearly 300,000 alien warships had gathered at the edge of human space. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen, representing the combined might of 47 different species united in their desire to humble humanity. Engineer Cho Minji received the intelligence reports in her underground facility on Luna, and for the first time in months her expression showed real concern. Not fear, but the kind of worry that came from being forced to use tools she had hoped would never be necessary. "Ma'am," her assistant Dr. Yoon Ho-jin said quietly, The latest count puts their total at 287,000 ships. Even with our technological advantages, those are troubling numbers. Cho Minji nodded thoughtfully, then walked to a control panel that had remained sealed behind multiple layers of security for 3,000 years. Then it's time to show them the real difference between us, she said, entering a code that had been passed down through generations of engineers. Activate the home defense protocol. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for the next 10,000 years. Every human world, every hidden base, every disguised installation suddenly revealed itself as something far more than anyone had imagined. The 847 worlds that the galaxy knew about were joined by over 15,000 additional colonies that had been completely hidden from alien sensors. Admiral Kim Do-yeon stood on the bridge of the HSS Peaceful Resolution, watching as humanity's true fleet assembled. Ships emerged from hyperspace, from hidden bases inside asteroids, from storage facilities that had been disguised as moons. The 2 million vessels that had already been revealed were joined by 8 million more. Sir, Commander Lee Nara reported, her voice filled with awe despite having been born into this secret. Final count is 10,200,000 active warships. Production facilities are online and can maintain this number indefinitely. And our population centers? Secure, sir. All civilian colonies have been moved to safety positions. Combat zones are clear of non-military personnel. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. He had hoped this day would never come, but his people had prepared for it nonetheless. Send the final warning to the alien coalition. After this, we stop being gentle. The message that reached the combined alien fleet was not from Dr. Park Yuna or Commander Lee Hwan. This time, it came from Admiral Kim himself, and his tone carried the weight of 3 millennia of suppressed military tradition. Commanders of the alien coalition, he began, his voice reaching every ship in their massive fleet, you have made a serious error in judgment. You believed that our restraint was weakness. You interpreted our kindness as an invitation to aggression. You have chosen to test the patience of a species that spent 3,000 years learning how to be patient. He paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much and planned for things he hoped would never happen. You now face 10 million human warships, each one individually capable of defeating your entire original fleet. Our soldiers have trained for 3,000 years for this moment. Our weapons have been perfected beyond your ability to comprehend. Our resolve has been tested by centuries of choosing peace when war would have been easier. You have 1 hour to withdraw to your home systems. After that, we will be forced to teach you why every intelligent species in the galaxy spent the last 3 millennia believing that humans were too peaceful to fight. Supreme War Leader Vorthak, watching from his flagship deep within the alien formation, felt his confidence beginning to crack. The human ships that filled the sensor screens didn't look like anything his species had ever encountered. They moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Their energy signatures suggested power sources that shouldn't be possible to contain within ships of their size. Sir, his tactical officer reported with obvious fear, our computer analysis of their fleet composition doesn't make sense. They have ships that appear to be generating more power than small stars. Their weapon signatures are unlike anything in our databases. How is that possible? Dr. Park Yuna's voice answered him, broadcast across all alien channels. Because, War Leader, you're looking at the result of 3,000 years of technological development by a species that was already dangerously advanced. When we chose to hide our capabilities, she appeared on screens throughout the alien fleet, still sitting in her peaceful laboratory, still wearing the same gentle expression. But now the equations and diagrams behind her were different, showing weapon designs and energy calculations that made alien scientists step away from their monitors in disbelief. You see, she continued, while you spent the past 3 millennia improving your existing technologies, we were developing entirely new forms of science. We didn't just build better guns and stronger armor. We learned how to manipulate the fundamental forces that hold reality together. As if to demonstrate her point, space around the alien fleet began to change. Stars that had been millions of kilometers away suddenly appeared close enough to touch, then returned to their normal positions. Gravity shifted directions randomly, causing loose objects on alien ships to float in impossible patterns. Time itself seemed to stutter, making some ships appear to move in slow motion while others accelerated beyond normal physics. Captain Ryu Jinwoo, now commanding a battle group of 50 ships that looked like floating cities, opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. "This is Captain Ryu Jinwoo of the Human Defense Force," he said calmly. "You are experiencing a demonstration of selective reality modification. We are not harming you, but we are showing you that we can change the laws of physics in localized areas when we choose to do so." The effects stopped as suddenly as they had begun, leaving the alien crews shaken and confused. Their sensors told them that nothing impossible had happened, but their own eyes had seen things that couldn't exist. "How?" Supreme War Leader Vorthak demanded, his voice breaking slightly. Engineer Cho Minji answered him from her facility on Luna. 3,000 years ago, we discovered that reality is much more flexible than most species believe. The laws of physics aren't really laws, they're more like suggestions that can be modified if you understand them well enough. She gestured to displays showing weapon systems that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our ancestors chose to stop fighting not because they were weak, but because they realized they were on the verge of becoming something that even they were afraid of. They chose to limit their own power to preserve the possibility of friendship with other species. "But you tested our patience too far," Admiral Kim added, his image appearing beside the engineers. "You mistook our choice for inability. You forced us to remember things we had deliberately forgotten." The demonstration that followed lasted exactly 30 minutes and ended the largest military alliance in galactic history. Human ships didn't attack the alien fleet in any traditional sense. Instead, they simply made it clear that the concept of attack was now meaningless. Alien weapons found themselves firing backwards. Ships discovered that their own armor was now transparent to their enemies, but impervious to their own defenses. Engines started moving their vessels in directions that didn't exist in normal space. Most terrifying of all, the aliens realized that none of this was hurting them. The humans were demonstrating that they could have destroyed the entire fleet instantly, but were choosing instead to simply rearrange things. "Sir," the Kareth tactical officer reported in a voice that had lost all traces of military confidence, "they're not damaging our ships. They're just changing how our ships work. Our weapons are now programmed to fire only at asteroids. Our engines will only take us toward our home systems. Our life support systems are actually working better than before." Supreme War Leader Vorthak stared at his displays in growing horror. "They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to help us," Dr. Park Yuna's gentle voice confirmed his realization. "Exactly, War Leader. We don't want to rule over you or conquer your people. We want you to go home safely and think about what you've learned today. You could have killed us all. In about 3 seconds, yes, but then we would have had to live with the knowledge that we had chosen destruction over education. We prefer to teach rather than terminate." The alien coalition began to break apart within hours. Ships that had traveled across the galaxy to join the fight against humanity started requesting permission to leave. Species that had never met each other before began having conversations as 6 months had passed since the Great Demonstration, as historians were already calling it. The galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace, with most species still trying to understand what they had witnessed. But in the deep monitoring stations that ringed the galactic rim, human sensors were detecting something that made even their most experienced officers nervous. Captain Ryu Jinwoo, now promoted to Admiral, stood in the command center of Outpost Omega, humanity's most distant early warning station. The facility hung in the empty space between galaxies, disguised as an automated research probe. Around him, technicians monitored instruments that could detect disturbances across millions of light years. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Park Suho, "we're tracking massive energy signatures moving in from the void. The aliens who fled after the demonstration have definitely made contact with something out there." Admiral Ryu studied the sensor readings with growing concern. "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown, sir. Whatever's coming uses technology that doesn't match any known species. Power output suggests vessels significantly larger than anything in our databases." Dr. Park Yuna's voice came through the communication system from her research facility on Earth. "Admiral Ryu, we've been analyzing the data from your sensors. I'm afraid we have a situation that requires immediate attention." Her image appeared on the main screen, and for the first time since Ryu had known her, the doctor looked genuinely worried. Behind her, displays showed star charts marking the movement of objects that didn't seem to follow normal space-time physics. "What are we looking at, Doctor?" Admiral Ryu asked. "We're looking at the predecessors," Dr. Park Yuna replied quietly. The species that ruled this galaxy before any of us existed. They've been sleeping in the dark between galaxies for over 2 million years, and our recent activities seem to have woken them up. Admiral Kim Do-hyun's image joined the conversation from Mars Command. How much do we know about them? Very little, Dr. Park Yuna admitted. Our archaeological records suggest they were the first species to achieve what we would consider godlike technological capabilities. They apparently decided that ruling over lesser species was beneath them, so they went into voluntary exile in the void between galaxies. Engineer Cho Minji's voice added from Luna Base, "Sir, I'm reading the energy signatures from Admiral Ryu's position. Whatever ships they're using, they're generating power levels that make our most advanced vessels look like candles compared to stars." The situation became clear over the following days. The alien ships that had fled after humanity's demonstration had indeed found something in the dark, ancient automated systems left behind by the predecessors. In their desperation to find weapons capable of challenging humanity, they had awakened sleeping giants that viewed the current galactic civilization as nothing more than children playing with dangerous toys. Commander Li Huan, now recognized as humanity's primary voice in galactic affairs, called an emergency session of all species leaders. The meeting was held in neutral space on a station that had been built by the Narathi Trade Collective but was now under human protection. "Fellow beings," Li Huan began, addressing representatives from over 300 species, "we face a crisis that makes our recent disagreements seem trivial. The predecessors are returning, and they are not pleased with what they have found." The Kareth delegation, led by a much humbler Supreme War leader Vorthak, shifted nervously in their seats. "What do these predecessors want?" Vorthak asked. "From what we can determine," Dr. Park Yuna answered, joining the meeting via hologram, "they want to clean house. Their automated systems have been monitoring galactic civilization for 2 million years, and they've concluded that the current species are too violent and chaotic to be allowed to continue existing." A representative from the Zeth corporate syndicate stood up abruptly. "Are you saying they plan to destroy us all?" "Not destroy," Li Huan replied calmly. "Reform. They appear to believe that current galactic civilization needs to be reorganized under proper supervision." Their supervision. The meeting dissolved into chaos as representatives from dozens of species began shouting at once. Some demanded that humanity use their advanced weapons to fight the predecessors. Others suggested immediate surrender. A few species announced they were withdrawing from galactic civilization entirely. Li Huan waited for the noise to die down, then spoke again in the same gentle tone he had always used. "There is, however, a solution to this problem." The room fell silent. Supreme War Leader Vorthak leaned forward. "What kind of solution?" "The kind that requires all of us to work together," Li Huan replied. "The predecessors left this galaxy because they were tired of managing lesser species. If we can demonstrate that we've learned to manage ourselves, they might choose to leave us alone." Dr. Park Yuna's image stepped forward. "Our analysis suggests that the predecessors are not evil, merely disappointed. They created a galactic civilization that was meant to be peaceful and productive. When they return and find constant warfare and competition for resources, they conclude that their experiment failed." Engineer Cho Minji added her voice from Luna Base. "But if they found a galaxy where all species worked together, where conflicts were resolved through cooperation rather than conquest, where advanced civilizations protected and guided less developed ones, they might decide that their experiment had succeeded after all." The implications were staggering. The various species representatives looked at each other with dawning understanding. The humans weren't just proposing an alliance, they were proposing a complete restructuring of galactic civilization. "You want us to create a government that includes everyone," the Narathi representative said. "Slowly, not a government," Li Huan corrected. "A family. A community where every species contributes what they do best and receives what they need most." Admiral Kim's image appeared on the screen. "The predecessors will arrive in approximately 60 days. We have that long to prove that galactic civilization can work the way they originally intended." What followed was the most intensive period of cooperation in galactic history. Human technology was shared freely with every species, but not weapons technology. Instead, humans provided medical advances, agricultural improvements, and industrial techniques that could improve quality of life across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together on projects that benefited everyone. The Kareth's military expertise was redirected toward planetary defense and disaster relief. The Zeth corporate syndicate's business networks became distribution systems for resources that were shared rather than sold. Engineer Cho Minji worked around the clock to establish what she called the Harmony Network, a galaxy-spanning communication system that allowed instant coordination between all member species. More importantly, it allowed real-time translation and cultural exchange that helped species understand each other in ways that had never been possible before. Dr. Park, Yuna's research teams worked with alien scientists to develop new technologies that combined the best ideas from every species. The results were innovations that no single species could have achieved alone. When the predecessor fleet finally arrived, they found something they had not expected. Instead of the chaotic collection of competing species they had left behind 2 million years ago, they discovered an integrated galactic civilization that functioned as a single entity while preserving the unique characteristics of each member species. Admiral Ryu, now commanding the joint fleet that represented all galactic species, received the first communication from the predecessors. The message was simple and came in mathematical concepts that transcended language barriers. Children of our children, the message began, we return to find growth where we expected decay. You have achieved what we thought impossible: unity without uniformity, strength without oppression, advancement without destruction. The predecessor ships were indeed massive beyond comprehension, vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, but they did not come as conquerors. They came as teachers, ready to share knowledge that could elevate galactic civilization to heights previously unimaginable. The meeting between the predecessors and the new Galactic Confederation took place in the space near Earth, with representatives from every species present. The predecessor speakers appeared as beings of pure energy, their forms shifting between different states of matter as they communicated. You have surprised us, the lead predecessor admitted. When we detected the energy signatures of advanced warfare, we expected to find the same cycles of violence that drove us into exile. Instead, we find a species that chose restraint over dominance, and others that chose cooperation over conquest. Commander Li Huan, speaking for all galactic civilization, replied with characteristic humility. We learned from our mistakes, honored ones. We discovered that the greatest strength is knowing when not to use strength. The predecessors agreed to remain in the galaxy, but not as rulers. They established themselves as advisors and teachers, sharing technologies and knowledge that would help the galactic community explore beyond their current galaxy and establish contact with other civilizations among the stars.